Well, hello all, and you are entering one of my favorite classes, which is statistical analysis. I know this may not be one of your favorite classes. Well, hopefully it will be when we're done. But this is a course I have taught for many, many years, and it's really a neat thing to actually see when all of us begin to understand what all of those stats mean, how they work for us at work, whether we're public or nonprofit. So I think you're really going to enjoy the class. Okay, 2 chapters to read this week. The first one is chapter 1, and this is going to just talk about the book is not a the book is augmenting the class. This is going to be a predominantly lecture-heavy class, but it's going to give you some real technical things that are going to help you. So this first chapter is going to tell you about how to create tables and graphs and charts. But the big thing I want you to get from this is before we can even talk about frequency distribution tables and histograms and all that, we need to really understand the types of variables that are out there. And because the way we define a variable tells us what kinds of stats we can run on the back end. The next chapter is going to talk about what we call measures of central tendency, which will be things like mean, median, and mode. How central are the data? And we're going to go into this in a lot more depth as we move through the course, but this will get you started there. It's going to talk about variance and standard deviation. So where mean, median, and mode tell us how central the data are, standard deviation, we usually call that a measure of dispersion. How wide is the range and the standard deviation. And then it's going to start talking about a z-score. Okay, so that's going to get you started on the readings. The next thing I want you to make sure you're anchored to is the difference between qualitative and quantitative research. Although this is a statistics class, we have to get the preliminaries done before we can get to statistics. So in order to know what types of statistics would be appropriate to run, we need to know what kind of research we're dealing with. So the first type is qualitative research, and we're going to be covering this, but not as much in depth because the statistics don't apply to most of the qualitative research. So why would we use qualitative research? And that's intended to show us patterns and trends. If I want to ask the question, why do people get jumped into a gang? Why do people start using drugs? Why do people take a certain freeway to work? How did they get started in this? When did they get started in this? All of those who, what, when, where, why types of questions are qualitative questions, meaning I'm trying to discover a pattern or a trend. When I'm dealing with quantitative research, I'm trying to determine a relationship. Does this cause that? So does this gang intervention program reduce gang recidivism or people going back into jail? Does this job training program, I'm making this up, can you tell us I'm going? Does this job training program reduce unemployment or increase employment? So we can look at them differently, but if we're trying to say, does this cause that? Quantitative research. Why is something happening? Then I'm looking for a pattern or a trend. How does something happen? When does something happen? Qualitative. So I want you to start making that distinction between quantitative and qualitative. Now there are certain things that are considered descriptive statistics, and the video is going to cover that a little bit. But for the most part, I want you with the basic concept, patterns and trends. If your question is how, who, what, when, where, why, how, you're doing qualitative research. If your question is, does this cause that, you're doing quantitative research. So this is a 9-minute video. We're going to be seeing a few of his throughout this course. I think he's an undergrad teacher, but he's very amusing as he goes through. So if you like awesomeness, which will make sense when you see his first video, but if you like awesomeness, you will like these videos as we go through. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about a research flow. So one of the first things that we do in research is we have to define our terms or our variables. And what we call that is operationalizing our variables. So if we're saying, does this make somebody happy? Well, we have to define what we mean by happiness. Does this reduce weight loss, or does this weight loss program reduce weight? Then we just have to define, are we saying weight in pounds, weight in stones, weight in grams, kilos, I don't know what you weigh yourself in. Does it mean BMI? So all of these things that we kind of take for granted, well, we know what we mean by whatever. This is where the time that we would identify that. So the first thing we usually do is identify our terms. Once we know what the terms are, we can then develop a research question. Again, the research question is going to guide whatever it is you want to find out, guides what type of research you're going to do, whether it's qualitative or quantitative. So if it is qualitative, you're looking for a pattern or a trend. If it's quantitative, then you're looking for a relationship. Then I'm going to put kind of as an offset here. So if it's qualitative, you're going to go to the next step, which is design. If it's quantitative, the next thing we need to know is it experimental or quasi-experimental? We're going to go into this more later, but just as an overview, an experimental design means I, the researcher, have control of my test group and we'll call it a control group. So if you think about medical research, if they're going to administer a drug to somebody, they usually have the test group that gets the medication and the control group that gets maybe a placebo. But the researcher decides who is in which group. This group is going to get it, this group is not, and they can control from there. That doesn't always work for us in the public sector, nonprofit sector, because if I'm trying to find out, does heroin use during pregnancy reduce the birth weight of the child? God forbid anybody's on heroin while they're pregnant. All right, so I can't, as a public servant researcher, say, okay, pregnant woman number 1, you're going to get heroin, and pregnant woman number 2, you're not going to get heroin. All right, I can't do that. But what I can do is I can say, of the women who gave birth at this hospital, I am going to evaluate or do research on women who came in heroin addicted and those who did not, and look at the birth weight of the children. We refer to that as a quasi-experimental study because I did not put them into certain groups. I didn't control for income and race and religion and all of those things. I just kind of get what I get with 2 separate groups. So in an experiment, we say we have a test group and a control group because I have controlled it. In a quasi-experimental study, which is what most of us will do, we have a test group or a project group and a comparison group. So not a control group. Those are the differences. We'll talk more as we go through the class. The next thing, whether it's qualitative or quantitative, we're going to select a design. So in qualitative, your design might be a phenomenological research or a case study or something like that. That's the design you're going to select. In a quasi-experimental or in a quantitative study, quasi-experimental, you might have a pre and a post test. You might have a pre and a midterm and a post test. You may have a project group and a control group, and again, we'll talk all about those as we move through. The next thing in your research flow, so we know what we're talking about, we've defined our variables, we know what question we want to ask, which drove us to qualitative or quantitative, then we've selected our design. Now we have to say, how are we going to get the information? That's the methodology, the methods we're using. So if I want to determine if somebody lost, if we have an after-school program for children who are classified as obese, and I want to see if my after-school program is going to reduce obesity. Now, one of the ways I might measure that is by weight. So the design might be I take their weight in the beginning and I take their weight at the end. Now, the method is, how do I get that information? How do I get their weight? So let's say I wanted to find out the weight of everyone taking this class right now. Well, there's a couple of ways I could do that. I could ask you what your weight is. I don't know how reliable that information will be, but I could ask you. I could do a survey. That could be my method. So I could either ask you a question in an interview. I could do a survey and you could write it down. I could do a document analysis and just take the information off your driver's license. Now, I don't know how accurate your driver's license is, but yeah. So anyway, but I could. That would be the method. Then would be document analysis. Or I could use a method where I put you on a scale and I get the number that way. Methods, think about methods as the way the information gets from wherever it is to me, the researcher. That's my method. So my method could be a survey. It could be an interview. It could be a document analysis where I get it from your driver's license, or I could put you on a scale. All of those are valid methods, some maybe more valid than others. So the design is, when do I get that information? The methodology is, how do I get that information? And then, are we going to do any sampling? So are we going to take it from, let's say, if I'm sampling, and again, we'll do weight for the class. If I'm going to sample, if I'm going to take it from everybody in the class, or am I just going to sample every third person in the class, alphabetically, whatever that is, then we talk about sampling. Then after all of this, then we know what statistics to run and how to analyze it. So before we can get to that statistics portion of the class, we've got to be able, we have to understand what comes before it in order to know how to run those statistics and what they mean on the back end. Okay, assignment 1, this is not going to be due this week. It's not, I think, for another week or so. And so the full instructions will be posted next week. But just to give you an overview of where we're going to be talking about a problem analysis. Because the way that we're going to structure this class is we're going to design, not conduct, but design a program evaluation. In that, we will know then what statistics to run and what will they mean, and also learning about methodology and all the other things. So in order to do this with a program evaluation, the first thing we have to identify in a program evaluation is, what is the problem that the program is attempting to solve. So the problem has to be statistically, it has to be stated with statistics. Remember, once you are in this class, you are no longer an advocate. You are now a social scientist. So if it helps you, go out to Goodwill, get a white lab coat, and wear that while you're doing all your stat assignments. Because you are not trying to make the numbers do anything. You're not trying to advocate that this program is the best. You are just an unbiased, cold-hearted scientist. So again, if I'm developing methodologies and a design to determine whether this drug decreases cancer, or it decreases the size of a cancer cell in, a petri dish or something like that, I'm not like, yeah, medicine, go, 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 and I'm going to make the numbers show that. No, you're just going to run the experiment and see what comes out of it, with no heart in this. I mean, hopefully you're all those researchers are all trying to cure cancer, but you're trying to get in there and you're trying to determine, did this actually occur objectively? So the first thing is we do a problem analysis. Then we identify what program is trying to solve that. So for this class, you're going to have to pick some program that's either being run by a nonprofit or a government agency that's attempting to solve some problem in the community. And then we look at the purpose of the program, and we're going to talk about this in just a minute. The purpose of the program should be always to solve the problem, and we have to word that in a certain way. Then we develop our research questions, and then we identify and define or operationalize our variables. So let's see what that looks like. All right, so here's the flow I want you to be really comfortable with. The first thing we have to do is identify a problem. This problem is not an opinion. This is a statistical problem. If you don't, and for some people, we usually refer to this as a problem analysis, but for some people that puts you in the mindset that, oh, this is a horrific problem. I don't want you even thinking problem. So if this is a hard word for you, think issue analysis, that you're just providing information. You are the researcher and you're just providing data. So a problem analysis or an issue analysis is just data. This section of your paper should start with the phrase something like, in 2017, X number of something happened. So in 2017, there were 250, God forbid, DUI-related fatalities in the city of Los Angeles. That is a perfect opening problem statement. In 2017, there were 250, I'm making that number up, 250 DUI-related fatalities in the city of Los Angeles. Then we identify the program. The program, maybe in this case, is the XYZ DUI checkpoint program. Then we look at, well, what's the purpose of the DUI checkpoint program? In this case, the purpose of the program is to reduce the number of DUI-related fatalities in the city of Los Angeles. Then, what's the research question? Does the XYZ DUI checkpoint program reduce the number of DUI-related fatalities in the city of Los Angeles? Then we think, well, what's the dependent variable? Well, the dependent variable is DUI-related fatality. It's just that easy, or not. So let's try this again. Let's think about, what else could we use? Gang violence. All right, so in 2017, there were X number of gang-related fatalities. I'm going to use that one again. In the city of, we'll just keep Los Angeles, in the city of Los Angeles. The program is the XYZ Gang Intervention Program. Purpose of the program is to reduce the number of gang-related fatalities in the city of Los Angeles. Research question: does the XYZ Gang Intervention Program reduce the number of gang-related fatalities in the city of Los Angeles? Dependent variable, back to the problem, gang-related fatalities. This class should be the simplest class you take, but it's going to take rethinking the ideas that you hold regarding how you write, how you think. So take your time to go through this. Pick a program that is simple. I am going to please urge you, do not pick large, complex social problems for the purpose of this class. Avoid homelessness, problems like homelessness. Avoid problems like food insecurity, things that are very difficult for us to measure. Try to keep on simple projects. Anything dealing with death and dying is usually easy. It's not fun, but it will. It's an easier one for us to measure, because remember, this class, I don't care what program you pick. I don't care about the program, not that I don't care, but I don't, for the purpose of this class. What I'm trying to do is teach you research methodology, research design, and statistics. So you just need a thin program, something that we can kind of relate this to and use it. If you pick a program for your first assignment and it just doesn't work for you, pick a different one for the second assignment. If you all want to pick the same program, go for it. That's fine. If 5 of you or 10 of you want to use the same program, you're more than welcome to do that. If you all want to pick different ones, that's fine too. But please pick something that is very simple and straightforward with an easy and well-defined problem that is not a complex social problem. Then once you have that, then you can work through this information pretty easily. Oh, hang on. I think my little arrows want me to go through this one more time. I don't know if they're all going to come in, but let's try it. All right, so problem again, let's just do the DUI checkpoint one. All right, problem is DUI-related, in 2017, X number of DUI-related fatalities in the city of Los Angeles. The program is the XYZ checkpoint program. Purpose of the program is to reduce the number of DUI-related fatalities in the city of Los Angeles. Research question, does the XYZ DUI checkpoint program reduce the number of DUI-related fatalities in the city of Los Angeles? And then the dependent variable, DUI-related fatalities. Okay, so hopefully my arrows don't want me to go through this one more time. Oh, they do. But we didn't. We just overrode that. So, okay, we're on to something else. Oh, and this is a good place to stop and reiterate. Please, please, please do not try to do this class on your own. Please find people with similar schedules to you or similar interests to you, and please set aside 15 minutes a week to meet with your classmates. This one, because you're going to think you have it until you try to tell it to somebody else, and then it's going to fall apart. So before it falls apart in an assignment, please get in that study group that you can run this stuff by each other during the week, every week, especially when we get to that statistics exam. The other thing is, please, please invite me to attend your meetings. I can do early mornings, maybe not too early, but I can do earlier mornings, I can do afternoons, and I can do evenings. I can do later evenings up until 11 o'clock at night. So please let me help you through this class, but get a small group together or a big group, doesn't matter, and find a time during the week that you guys are good to meet. And then if you want me to come in at the end of your meeting, I'm happy to do that. All right, so now let's talk about variables. So here I've got DUI-related fatalities. That was what we were just talking about. So that is my dependent variable. This is a little, I call it a lollipop model, but nobody else does, so please don't use that term with anybody. They'll think you're nuts. So don't talk to your MPA brothers and sisters over at UCLA and Berkeley and say, yes, we used a lollipop model for, no, just don't do that. Okay, so there's the way that I see this, because I'm a very visual person, I see the dependent variable always in the center of this model. So in this case, I've got DUI-related fatalities. That's my dependent variable for the research. Then I look at my independent variables, which are all on the outside. So I think in this model that DUI checkpoints may cause a change to the dependent variable, which is DUI-related deaths. So what's outside are the things that could cause a change, independent variables, that can cause a change to the dependent variable. So as the number of DUI checkpoints increases, we may think DUI-related fatalities will decrease. As the number of checkpoints decrease, we might think DUI-related fatalities will increase. So think of independent variables on the outside, all of them trying to impact. So the dependent variable doesn't change, or I'm sorry, the dependent variable does not change the independent variable. So the deaths does not cause a change to the checkpoints. Checkpoints cause a change to the number of deaths. Then I want to look outside of my program and say, okay, other than the program, so let's say we had some DUI checkpoints and the number of deaths went down. Well, now this is where the statistics come in. Well, was that really the result of the checkpoints, or could that have been the result of something else like gas prices? So God forbid gas prices goes to $15 a gallon. Could that impact DUI-related fatalities? Maybe yes, maybe no. But we might want to look at that. So if there were X number of DUI checkpoints and the number of deaths went down, that might have been the cause, or was there more of a relationship between the gas price and the number of deaths? And we might look to another independent variable being the number of bars in the area. If the checkpoints were there and the DUI deaths did not go down, but the number of bars doubled in that area, maybe the checkpoints did a good job, but because of the number of bars in the area, it's throwing those numbers off. So understanding the dependent and independent variables will help us understand how do we run the statistics on the back end. Okay, let's talk about how we begin thinking of the problem in the region. So I want you, when you're talking about that problem, I want you to state it in terms of the client's needs or the constituent's needs, however we're going to look at that, not the agency's needs. So when you write that problem analysis, and this won't be till next week, do not think about, nowhere in a problem analysis should be the name of the program or your agency or any other agency. All we want is statistics based on the problem. You need to have statistical evidence for every claim in this section. And remember that the lack of a program or lack of resources is not a problem, it's probably the solution. So, okay, years ago I was working on, I was helping a nonprofit who couldn't get this problem analysis right for some grants that they were working on. And I said, okay, tell me, long story, but a short version, tell me what the problem is that you're trying to solve. So they said, oh, and we were around a conference table. They said, oh, the problem is we don't have anybody trained on this piece of optical equipment. All right. Now, they were a medical missionary group who would go overseas to like third world countries. All right, so you don't have anybody trained on this piece of optical equipment. So my question to them was, but why is that a problem? And now they spent another 10 minutes saying, well, we can't deploy our doctors or ophthalmologists or whoever they were, can't deploy them overseas. Okay, why is that a problem? Well, they can't, and they're getting frustrated. This took like 40 minutes. Getting so frustrated. They can't do this eye test. Okay, what's my next question to them? Why is that a problem? Well, we can't, anyway, this went on and on. What it boiled down to is there was an epidemic of an eye disease in the part of this third world country that was causing blindness. And if a head of household went blind, the family perished. That's the problem. The solution is get somebody trained on this piece of optical equipment, deploy them overseas, do the test, get the medical, all of that is in the solution. The problem is blindness. So we've got, when we're doing a problem analysis or an issue analysis, we've got to make sure we're anchored to truly the problem. All right, so when you're doing this, and this is not going to come naturally, this is going to take practice. So please, please make sure you're in a study group very early and make sure you're pulling me into it, because I can give you feedback in writing, but it's not the same in like a matter of 30 seconds. I can get you kind of back on the right track or adjusted onto the right track a lot easier. Make sure your problem statistics match the program service region. So if you're telling me there is a, quote, problem in Los Angeles, you can only give me LA stats. I don't want to see California stats. I don't want to see national stats. We have to make sure that the numbers are matching the region that that the program is servicing. So if we say there's a national, we're going to use the word epidemic, which we wouldn't use as researchers, epidemic of childhood obesity in the country, but is that necessarily true for Beverly Hills? Maybe, maybe not. If you're doing a Beverly Hills program, I need to know what the issue is in Beverly Hills, not what it is nationally. I don't want to know what it is statewide. You've got to get these numbers regional. Now, this is a whole other issue, is you want to find a simple enough problem that you can get problem data on. If you have an inside track to the fire department or law enforcement or things like that, and you can get these numbers, great. If you are picking something that's so complex that you can't get data off of it, that could be problematic. If you are doing anything health related, you will probably have to reach out to the county statistician, health department statistician. I have been doing this project for decades now, and consistently my students say that they get such great information from the county health department statisticians when they're doing these types of programs. So if you contact them and you say, you know, I'm a grad student at CalBaptist and I'm working on, you know, research on cancer rates in Riverside. can you give me some data on that? And they will be happy to do that. They are just thrilled that people are working off of their data. So whether you're talking about Riverside County, LA County, San Bernardino County, Orange County, those are the ones my students usually use. They have never had a problem getting health-related data. So if you want to do that, but you're going to have to make probably a phone call to the county health department statistician in order to get that data. Or you can get some, whatever you can grab, state from the state, as long as like state data is broken down by city or by county. So, and again, this is where if you have a partner in class and you guys can, track down some of this information and share it, that's perfectly fine to do. Be concise and interesting, and avoid using acronyms and jargon. So you want to make this very clean, because remember, these types of reports are going to probably elected officials, or if you're doing a nonprofit, it's the board of directors. They may not be subject matter experts in this field. So make sure that your language is very crisp. Please make sure that bias is removed from your writing. So there should be, and vague language needs to be removed. So there shouldn't be things like, there was the majority of something happened. No, tell me 59%. There was the devastating effects. We don't use that language. We use very clean statistical language when we're talking as a researcher. All right, this is something that will be part of your first assignment, and also this is leading to your final paper as well. This is the program information, and this is what we're going to focus on this week as well. All right, so I want to know which agency or organization is running the program. So find a program you want to work off of and find out which agency or organization is running it. What is the name of the program? What services do they offer? I want to know how many staff work in that program and what the budget is, that type of information. This may require a phone call or an email to somebody. So those of you who do not like to talk to real live people, between having study group sessions and talking with me and talking with people in programs, this may be a little uncomfortable, but you'll be able to do it. I have faith in you guys. Let me know for the program how many clients have been served. If this is a brand new program and you are designing a program evaluation for them to use in the future, then you can omit some of this information. Now remember, if you do talk to a program, please assure them that you are not doing a program evaluation on their agency. You are merely designing it, but you will not conduct it. Because if someone comes into my agency and says, we're doing a program evaluation of you, that's worse than the IRS coming in to audit me. So people are not going to be very open with you if they think you're actually evaluating their program, but because we're not doing that in this class, we're merely designing it and then deciding what statistics we would run, should put them a little more at ease. You can include any relevant historical information, anything like that, in this section as well. Now the purpose of the program, remember that chart where the arrows wanted me to keep going over and over? So the problem is DUI-related fatalities. DUI checkpoint is the program. The purpose of the program is to reduce the number of DUI-related fatalities. When you write this, quote, section of your paper, it should be one sentence. And it should focus on what the program intends to achieve, in this case, a reduction of DUI-related fatalities, not what it does. So the purpose of the program is not to conduct DUI checkpoints. That's what it does. But the purpose of it is to reduce the number of fatalities or accidents or something. So focus on the outcome for the clients or the constituents, depending on how you want to look at this, at the end of the program. So again, the problem is fatalities. Program is the DUI checkpoints. Purpose of the program, reduce the number of fatalities. I am going to have you write these papers with these what I'm going to call sections in there, but some of your sections will only have one sentence. And the purpose of that, we normally wouldn't write it this way, but I want you to feel the rhythm of research. Here is the problem. Here is the program. Purpose of the program, fix the problem, however we're going to do that. So everything, I want you to feel this rhythm. So some of your sections of your paper will only have 1 or 2 sentences. And remember, the purpose of the program always relates back to that problem analysis. All right, then let's look at the variables. Now there are 2 different things, and people, I want to make sure you don't get this confused, that this is clear for you. First thing we look at is which are the dependent and which are the independent variables. Remember, the dependent variable for us is going to be the problem. Independent variable for us, one will always be the program participation. So that's one, and then we have other independent variables. So dependent, independent is one thing. Then we look at types of variables. This has to do with how did we, as the researcher, define the variable. So if I defined my variable as a nominal variable, so the type of variable is nominal, that means the variable has categories. So this would be eye color, hair color, race, ethnicity, gender, religion. All of those are just categories. All right, so if you have a variable that you're defining with categories, it would be nominal. If those categories have a ranked order to them, then we call it an ordinal variable. So if you have kids in school and they are freshmen, sophomore, juniors, and seniors, that's just a category. This one's a freshman, this one's a sophomore, but the categories have a ranked order to them. One is higher than the other. The last type of variable, and forget the technical definition of this, the easiest way to think about an interval ratio variable is that it's a number. So if I say, are you an adult or a minor? And we can argue whether that's ordinal or nominal, but that's a category. If I say, are you 0 to 17 years old, 18 to 24 years old, 25 to 55 years old, which category are you in? That's an ordinal variable. Okay, so age might be able to be nominal, age might be able to be ordinal, or I could say, how old are you in years? And then you're going to give me a number. That's interval ratio. Okay, so nominal are categories, ordinals are categories with a ranked order, and then just think interval ratio is a number. Okay, a number that we can calculate. So people will try to say, well, I'm going to say that this is, not satisfied to completely satisfied, on a scale of 1 to 5. That is still even though those are numbers, there's still an ordinal ranking because there's not what we call equal intervals between them. The difference between not satisfied and somewhat satisfied is not necessarily the same for you as it is for me. But the difference between being 42 years old and 43 years old is the same for everybody. So those intervals are equal. So just think numbers for interval ratio. Okay, when you are thinking about defining your variables, each variable you have has to have a title. Think like a dictionary. Have you guys even used it? Do you guys know what an actual dictionary is? Like a paper dictionary or an encyclopedia? Okay. All right, anyway, there were these things called books with pages and all of that out of paper, and they were called dictionaries. And you would look up a word, and then you would find out the definition. Same thing here. Pick a word, age. In this case, is it dependent or independent? Well, age isn't dependent on anything, so it's always going to be an independent variable. And then what type of variable is it? Well, you can define age, we know, in many ways. You are the kings and queens of how you define your variables. You could define it as nominal, ordinal, or interval ratio. Let's say I want to define it ordinal, and I want to put age categories. Now, I normally wouldn't do this. If you can get to interval ratio, always define it as an interval ratio. But for our purpose, we're going to define it as ordinal. Then I would say, then what are the categories? So if you think about a dictionary, you have age. Then is it independent or dependent? Then the type of variable. So you know how like in a dictionary it would say it's a verb or a noun or something? So think age, and then is it a verb, a noun, or whatever? Is it nominal, ordinal, or interval ratio? Then if it's nominal or ordinal, what are the categories? and then the definition of each category. We're going to be going through that a lot more as we move through the class, but that should get you started on it. Okay, so this time I do want an introduction multimedia discussion board. You should all be pros on this by now. So develop a brief presentation, and what I want in this one is please share with us where you work. And if you're a full-time student or not working right now, that's perfectly fine. You're just not in the workforce at this point. That's perfectly fine. Or if you're private sector, perfectly fine as well. Then, have you ever lived or traveled outside the U.S.? This is going to be kind of important for when we get to our lit review, because we're going to be looking worldwide when we go through our lit review this time. If you've ever lived or traveled outside the U.S., what was your favorite location? And then tell us a little about it if you can. And if you haven't ever lived or traveled outside the U.S., if you had the opportunity, where might you want to visit? And then, do you have any experience with program evaluation? Many of you probably in the government and nonprofit sectors have had to be involved at some point with a program evaluation. So this would be a great time to share that. Presentation should be short, 2 to 3 minutes, and then 2 responses will be due on Sunday. For this one, responses just means welcoming each other to class, something you have in common, you both went to the same place, you both want to go to the same place, something like that. But a short introduction just with a few bits of information here. Okay, now we also have another discussion board. This is more of the assignment one. Again, due Saturday, 2 responses due Sunday, brief presentation, but I want to know which agency is running the program you selected. So hopefully by the end of the week, you know what program you want to select for this. So which agency is running it? What is the name of the program? What are the specific services that they offer? And I've put here, avoid brochure language. So remember, you are a scientist going in to assess the program. You are not an advocate. You don't think this is the best program. You've got a white lab coat on. So you don't want to say, you don't want to pull information off of their website or something. They enlighten and empower and do these wonderful things. That's not the language. What do? They provide resume services to unemployed people, period. All right, so avoid that brochure language. Begin speaking as a scientist would speak. What is the budget for the program? Remember, I don't want the agency budget. If you're doing something for the Red Cross, I don't want the Red Cross's budget. I want to know that specific program. What was the agency budget? How many staff are in that specific program? And then who do they serve? And do you have any historic numbers of how many they serve? They serve 500 a year, 20 a year, something like that. And then just briefly, why did you select the program? Again, a quick 2 or 3 minutes. Can we do this in 2 minutes? Maybe 3. All right, if you need to go up to 4 minutes, that's fine, but try to keep this short. Your responses, though, this time, and note that on the discussion board, I know sometimes it looks like stock language in there, but go down to the response section, and there's some specific things I want you to do this week. I'd like you to, if you know about the program, support the people and say, oh, I've got some contacts in that program, or I have some information I can give you on that program, but kind of work together. If you don't, but you have some insights you can share, or contact people that you have, or just, maybe something to help them really get focused on that, or maybe even where they might be able to find some problem analysis. So do try to actively help the best you can in this discussion board. All right, so hopefully the challenge has been accepted to become the best scientific, social science researchers out there, and become the cream of the crop. And I look forward to seeing all the information this week and look forward to working with all of you. So everybody have a very blessed week. If you have any questions, please let me know. And please, please let me know if you want me to come in and meet with your groups every week, or especially this first week. Have a great week.